How can parents get involved? I think these will answer some of the questions that have come up in previous discussions. I'll let you all take a moment to find a seat. I'm thrilled to introduce Karen Clancy, who has been just tireless in helping us to organize today's proceedings. She's an advisory committee member of the Berkeley China Initiative, and we're delighted to have her expertise and support, and including financial support through the Committee of 100. We're really delighted about that. So she will be moderating this afternoon's panel, and I'll let her introduce the participants.
Good afternoon. I'm very pleased to be here to be able to bring all the wonderful speakers that we've had today, because I think, as you can see, in California and across our nation, this issue has really come to the front burner. There are many people who are interested in how we can remain competitive, especially in California where we are on the Pacific Rim. How can we make sure that our students are able to compete in a global environment? And because of the rising of China economically and also academically through their understanding of global issues and their interest in going outside of their area, we're finding that they are very formidable competitors. And so competition is not something that is new to California or to America. And I think that's why, for example, 400 educators recently just returned from China as guests of the Hanban and the College Board to learn more about China and what's going on. So I think our conference today has been very timely, but I also think it's just a beginning. And for us to really understand how to make some systemic change and to do some things in California, we need to understand what's happening at the state level, as well to hear from all of the different contributors to our educational system. So I'm very pleased to have with me today Arlene Burns, who is the foreign language consultant from the California Department of Education, and also Yalan King, who is from the Advocates for Chinese Education in San Francisco. And I am a school board member in the Belmont Redwood Shores School District. I've been a board member for the last 11 years. And so hopefully the three of us will try to give you sort of an overview, and we'll also try to tie up some of the questions that have been percolating up throughout the day. So I'd like to turn it over to Arlene, who will introduce herself and tell us what's happening in Sacramento.
Thank you very much, Karen, and good afternoon. Congratulations to all of you who stayed here for all of the sessions today. And I was recently in China, and so it is especially meaningful for me to be here with all of you today, and I think it's been a wonderful day so far. As you may have heard, we are poised on the threshold for the development of foreign language standards for the first time in California. We have never had standards in foreign language before, and we are hoping to get participation from all of the language communities. And therefore, my role today is to provide an overview of the policy and process for developing and adopting standards, frameworks, and instructional materials. Of course, we can't talk about policy at the state level in education without mentioning the State Board of Education. As many of you may already know, this is the governing and policy-making body of the department. And the State Board sets the K-12 education policy for standards, instructional materials, assessment, and accountability. This board also adopts textbooks for grades K through 8 and also adopts regulations to implement other legislation. The board has 11 members, and those members are appointed by the governor. Another important advisory body to the State Board is the Curriculum Development and Supplemental Materials Commission. We need a shorter title for that, and so we refer to this body as the Curriculum Commission. And this commission is an 18-member panel, including 2 members of the legislature. 13 members are appointed by the State Board, 1 member is appointed by the governor, 1 by the Senate Committee on Rules, and 1 member is appointed by the Speaker of the Assembly. The public members serve for 4-year terms. When we talk about the standards movement in California, we know that content standards were designed to encourage the highest achievement of every student by defining the knowledge, concepts, and skills that students should acquire at each grade level. In California, this standards movement really began with the task force in the years 97, 98, when, quote unquote, the big 4 curriculum areas had standards that were adopted. That is, in English language arts, mathematics, science, and history social science. After that time, in 2001, the visual and performing arts had standards that were adopted by the state board. Most recently, the physical education standards were adopted in 2005, and the health standards are currently in progress. That panel that is appointed by the state board is currently meeting to develop standards that will then go to the state board for adoption. And so you may ask, what about foreign languages? Isn't it time for foreign language standards? We have mandated legislation for standards to be developed in foreign language. This legislation was by Senator Betty Carnett, Senate Bill 5, and it was passed in 2003. Now, even though it was passed in 2003, it says that foreign language standards need to be adopted by the state board in the year 2009. So as you can see, there was a gap there in when the bill was passed as to when the standards actually need to be adopted. But I will be returning to the foreign language standards in the timeline a little later in my presentation this afternoon. There are curriculum frameworks that are also adopted by the state board, and this is for grades kindergarten through grade 12. The curriculum frameworks are aligned to the adopted academic content standards. So you may ask, what happened in the case of foreign language? The last foreign language framework was adopted in the year 2001. And because there were no there were no standards in place at that time, we relied on the language learning continuum as the anchor of the document. You may have heard that continuum referenced earlier today by the California Foreign Language Project folks. And basically, this is something that provides benchmarks for development of student progress. However, we are looking forward to the next framework for foreign language, which will also be adopted in the year 2009. Now, if you're paying attention and it's not too late in the day, you may have said, the foreign language standards are to be adopted in the year 2009, but the frameworks are also to be adopted in the year 2009. So how can that be, since the frameworks are dependent on the content standards? For this reason, we hope that the foreign language framework will be, yes, adopted in 2009, but that the standards hopefully will be completed prior to 2009, so that in fact we can be like the other content areas and have frameworks that are developed on the standards. Now, we've heard a lot today about participation by parents, by educators in the state process at the state level. And what I want to impress upon all of you here today is that there is a huge amount of influence or ways for folks to become involved at the state level with the framework development, with standards, and with the instructional materials. For example, with the framework development, the board appoints a committee that will make recommendations to the Curriculum Commission. And this committee is basically comprised of educators who apply to be part of the process. So educators can become involved. Also, once the commissioners receive the recommendations from the committee members, they have a field review. This is another way that educators and parents can become involved and give input into the process. Also, there is a public hearing by both the Curriculum Commission and the State Board whenever a framework is up for adoption. So what I want to impress upon you here is that there is a role to play here, and there is a way to be involved, even to give input to something that may seem far away in Sacramento. I just want to clarify, though, the relationship between the content standards and the frameworks. The content standards describe what educators and professionals in the field expect kindergarten through grade 12 students to know. They are based on current research in education, and also in the specific content area, the frameworks provide a firm foundation for the curriculum and instruction by describing the scope and sequence of knowledge and skills that all students are expected to master. So that is, the standards will dictate what students should be able to do and know, and the curriculum frameworks will be the implementation piece for those standards. In addition, the frameworks establish criteria to evaluate instructional materials. These criteria are used to select, through the state adoption process, instructional materials for kindergarten through grade 8. The frameworks also guide district selection of instructional resources for grades 9 through 12. Furthermore, the frameworks also advocate assessment instruments that evaluate students' progress toward mastery of the standards while providing data used for program planning. The last foreign language framework, just for your reference, was adopted in the year 2001. So you're hopefully getting a sense as to how much time lasts between one framework to the other, from 2001 to 2009. Finally, the instructional materials evaluation and adoption process. Again, the board has the authority to adopt textbooks for kindergarten through grades 1 through 8. The submitted materials are evaluated for consistency with the criteria and standards in the curriculum frameworks. And of course, the Curriculum Commission serves as an advisory board to the State Board in the evaluation and adoption process. There are two kinds of adoptions: primary adoptions and follow-up adoptions. The primary adoptions are the first adoptions following the approval of new state frameworks. These are conducted every 6 years for reading language arts, mathematics, science, and history social science. Primary adoptions for foreign language, visual and performing arts, and health are to be conducted every 8 years. But in all cases, a follow-up adoption using the same evaluation criteria as in the primary adoption is to be scheduled between the primary ones. As with the framework development process, the adoption process is designed to ensure very broad public participation. And this is, again, an area that I hope some of you will become interested in and participate in. There are 3 steps in the adoption process. The first one is a legal and social compliance review to ensure that the submitted materials meet the board's standards for social content. And for foreign language, this is a very interesting point. As you know, in certain cultures, certain things may be more acceptable than in American cultures. And for this reason, when we held the last foreign language framework, foreign language adoption, we had the reviewers for the adoption also do the legal and social compliance, so that they were looking at the social nuances that may be appropriate, say, for the Chinese culture or the French culture, that would not be as acceptable in American culture. The second step is a public review and comment. Samples of instructional resources are submitted for adoption, and they are available at 22 learning resource display centers throughout the state. Written comments can be made on those resources that are then forwarded to the State Board for consideration. In addition, 3 separate public hearings are held prior to adoption, and all of the public hearings are noted and posted prior to the actual hearing date, so that folks will have the opportunity, if they're so inclined, to come to Sacramento and have their voices heard. The third step is the education content review, And this review is based on the framework and the content standards. Again, this is an area where educators can become involved. The process for adopting instructional materials follows a statewide recruitment and application process. Then the Curriculum Commission recommends and the State Board appoints 2 panels. The first panel, called the Instructional Materials Advisory Panel, you see this is why we use a lot of acronyms because all of these titles are so long, but the first panel is composed primarily of teachers. The second, is also called the Content Review Panel, and this panel is composed of subject matter experts such as university professors. So the content review panelists will be looked at, in the case of foreign language, for linguistic and cultural irregularities. Are there any linguistic errors in what's been submitted? Is there anything that would be considered inappropriate in the culture? So you have the 2 panels who are meeting simultaneously. They actually receive a huge amount of material sent to their homes so that they can do an independent review of the documents. And the joke is always that they used to have extra room in their garage for a car, but once these materials arrive, the room disappears. What they do is they come together then in Sacramento for deliberations. First, they get training on the evaluation criteria that has been set out in the curriculum framework. Following the training, they have their independent review, they come to Sacramento, and they have a few days of deliberations. Again, these deliberations are public meetings, and the public is invited to come and give input. There's always a certain scheduled time for public input for any of these meetings. Once the panels decide on which materials should or should not be recommended for adoption, these recommendations go forward to the Curriculum Commission. And then the commissioners consider the report, but they also have done their own independent review of the materials. The report by the commissioners then goes to the State Board, and the board considers the recommendations, the related documents, and the public comments prior to adopting each submission. And I know that I've given you a lot of details here in terms of process and how many panels there are and how many public hearings, but I just really wanted to convey a sense that this is an arena where you can become engaged, and I invite you as educators and as parents to participate in the process. For foreign language, the last primary adoption was held in the year 2003. Instructional materials were adopted in French, German, Spanish, Latin, and Japanese. Unfortunately, no publishers submitted materials in Chinese for this adoption. The follow-up adoption for foreign language was held in 2005. For this follow-up adoption, as opposed to the primary adoption, only materials in Spanish were submitted. And the next primary adoption for foreign language is slated for the year 2011. When we look at the foreign language standards that we are about to embark on, we notice that foreign language will be unique and have a unique set of circumstances that will be different than other curriculum areas. So, for example, we will need to look at types of programs, immersion programs, elementary programs, programs for native speakers, for heritage language learners. We also need to look at types of learners, English learners. We need to look at the less commonly taught languages. And it's interesting that languages that we used to consider less commonly taught, such as Japanese, thankfully are becoming more commonly taught, and we hope that Chinese will also move out of that category of the less commonly taught languages. We'll also need to look at American Sign Language, because that does satisfy the course requirement for a foreign language to graduate from high school and to enter the universities. But I think what's so important here and what I want to stress is that while there is the uniqueness of the foreign language standards, it's also something where we can draw upon and tap into the rich diversity and tapestry that we have in California, so that again, we're looking at all of the languages and cultures as an asset that we can bring to the table and have participate in the development of the standards. I also want to add at this time that in terms of Chinese language in particular, my phone is ringing off the hook and my email has not stopped with folks who want to teach Chinese. Whether they're here in this country, whether they are writing from China, whether they have it's a friend or it's somebody's cousin or they've heard of somebody and they want to connect with me. It has really been amazing, I would say, in the last 3 to 4 months that a majority of the inquiries I have for people who want to become credentialed are in the language of Chinese. And then, of course, it's great because I just get to refer them over to the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. So as you can see, there are exciting times ahead for foreign language. As I mentioned before, there have never been foreign language standards in the state. And so we're excited about joining our brothers and sisters, so to speak, in the other content areas and to have our own standards. And once those standards are in place, then that will anchor our framework document and will in turn set the course for adopting instructional materials. And so again, I want to invite all of you to join in this process in the ways that I've mentioned here so far today, and also to let you know that from the state's perspective, and this is something that we included in the last framework, we encourage offering a variety of languages, including the less commonly taught languages. While it is a local decision which language is offered, we certainly encourage that students start early, have a long sequence, and a broad array of in the language spectrum of offerings to choose from. Also, we believe that it's important to maintain and expand the native and heritage language skills of our students so that we do encourage native speaker courses and heritage language courses, and we have some of those already in the state in Chinese, Spanish, and Korean. And finally, I just want to mention that I think it's important for all of us to work together as we've begun to do here today in these initial first steps. I think becoming acquainted with each other's programs and also answering some of the questions as to how does this all work, how does the framework get put together, what is the mechanism. I think it's very important for us to work together because, as been mentioned already here today, we need to ensure that our students have the necessary language and cultural skills to not only compete but also cooperate in the global economy of today. And so I appreciate all of your patience and attendance here. I guess I have been the representative of the state bureaucracy, so as it was mentioned here before, alluded to. So I do appreciate your attention, and I'll turn it over now to our next speaker. Thank you.
Thanks, Arlene. And now we have Yalan King from Advocates for Chinese Education.
Hello, I'd like to thank the Committee of 100 and Karen for inviting me to speak here today, as well as the Berkeley Initiative on China for hosting this forum. Advocates for Chinese Education is a nonprofit organization comprised of parents, educators, students, and professionals who are focused on promoting Mandarin language and culture for San Francisco. We believe strongly that in order for our children to participate in the global economy of the future, that they will need to possess the skills necessary to engage China at every level. ACE was founded in January of 2005. Our mission is advocating, developing, and enabling Chinese language and cultural programs for our schools and community. Diverse families recognize the importance of Chinese to the global marketplace of the future. American, immigrant, multiracial, and adoptive families value the language as maintaining and extending the rich cultural fabric of San Francisco. By making Chinese immersion programs available and accessible to all children, we can drive academic achievement, as immersion programs have been proven to significantly enhance scholastic performance in every aspect. Energized by strong support to implement immersion and several other broadly available language acquisition programs, ACE has been working with the San Francisco Unified School District and other partners to develop and implement Mandarin programs. We formed a very strong grassroots group that drove the creation of the first Mandarin immersion program in the San Francisco Unified School District. This Mandarin program will be available this fall, and we hope to follow that shortly with at least one additional site in 2007. Contrast this with the city of Chicago that currently has 20 schools offering Mandarin and is adding an additional 5 programs this year. These programs will provide a huge benefit to the San Francisco community in preparing its children for the global economy and in setting standards of academic achievement. It is an opportunity for San Francisco to regain its leadership position as an international city. Our current goals and projects include lobbying for additional sites within the San Francisco Unified School District. One school program a year is not going to meet demand. We are actively recruiting teachers, advising on job opportunities, providing individualized feedback on resumes and interviewing techniques. We are an active participant in the Curriculum Development Committee, as well as the Committee of 100 Chinese Education and California Task Force. We have developed and implemented Mandarin Learn and Play classes for preschoolers and toddlers, and we are currently screening emails and phone calls for folks who are looking for classes from as young as 6 months old. We have partnered with the Confucius Institute of San Francisco State University, as well as with the Miraloma Education and Enrichment Program to develop an after-school program. This will serve as a training opportunity for teachers, as well as a test bed for curriculum development. The process of parents partnering with the San Francisco Unified School District and with Parents for Public Schools and other organizations in the establishment of new programs is a wonderful precedent and one that ACE is very proud to have set. As we move forward with our partners and our sponsors, we are looking to continue to lobby for additional programs and to assist in the development of immersion and enrichment programs from K through 12. One of our future goals is to create a database of Chinese education and resources that are available to the Bay Area. Every time I go to a different meeting or a different forum, there's a new organization and wonderful resources that are out there that I've not been aware of. So this is a future goal that we'd like to do. We'd also like to look at, as we're getting a lot of folks interested in getting their children to learn immersion, adding some adult Mandarin classes as well. With its surging economy, China is heading towards superpower status as its world clout continues to grow. China will surpass the U.S. in the next 20 years, if not sooner. 1 million students learn French, a language spoken by 80 million people. The State Department has designated Chinese as a critical language, and yet in the U.S. only 24,000 high school students learn Chinese, a language spoken by 1.3 billion people. Among the U.S. states, California has the highest number of Asians at 4.2 million. Within the San Francisco Unified School District, 44% of its student population is Asian. Within San Francisco, we currently have 1 private school, and this fall we will have 1 public school that offer Mandarin. To prepare our children now for the future, we must increase the number of quality school programs offering Mandarin. We must supply Chinese language teachers, and we must develop curriculum, assessment, and technology-based delivery systems. The next generation entering the workforce will engage China at every level. The United States, California, San Francisco, and the Bay Area will need these individuals to stay current for prosperity, culture, economic, and security as China continues to increase its competitiveness. Thank you.
I think from many of the speakers too, we've really needed to think about how we go about making this happen in California. And I think over the last few years, as I've worked with the Committee of 100 as their education consultant, we've talked to a lot of different groups about what they're doing. And most of the people have said that in their small area, they are creating wonderful programs. But what we're finding is that we need to share the programs that we're doing so that we have more of a joint effort and we can move forward more quickly. Some of the things I think is interesting, in January, President Bush came out with what he called his National Security Language Initiative. And he said that he was going to set aside, I think it was $115 million towards foreign language acquisition for the less commonly taught languages, Mandarin being one of them. And included in that were several grant opportunities to try to increase the amount of foreign language being taught in our schools. And so one of the programs was the Foreign Language Assistance Program grant. I know several of you here have received grants in the past, and hopefully many districts will receive those in the future. They're expecting 80 grants nationwide, and it will give districts up to $500,000 for 3 years. And so that's a considerable amount of money for school districts trying to start or expand their programs. Other grant opportunities that are coming down the line are ones that are similar to the K-16 pipeline project that last year went to the University of Oregon and Portland Public Schools. There is the possibility that grant funding program will come again, and so if that's possible, we're hoping that California as a state will be able to go together to really go after some of this funding so that we can move our initiative forward. The idea of trying to leap the hurdle of making it easier for teachers from China to come to the United States is something that keeps coming up. The State Department did put out an RFP for a program, but their program will only bring 10 teachers to the United States, and that's for the entire United States. And so when you think about the need that we have in California alone, 10 teachers doesn't do very much to move us forward. So I think that's where the advocacy piece comes in, where we need to work together. We need to try to get our parent groups who are very effective in advocating with legislators to realize that we do need to free some things up so that it is easier for not only for us to be developing programs so that our teachers who live here in the United States already and want to teach Mandarin can do it, but also in the meantime, if we want to bring teachers over from China, we do need to find ways to make that happen. Having just returned from China, the teachers in the schools there are very excited about having exchanges with schools in the United States. But one of the hurdles for them is the cost of coming to the United States. If you look at the cost of living in China compared to the cost of living in the United States, that alone would be a culture shock to teachers coming here. So that's something that we need to think about. The other thing is that the Chinese government has been very generous in bringing American teachers and educators to China to learn about the system, and they do want teachers to come to the United States, but having the visas be difficult to get is a hurdle that we'll have to deal with. The other thing is that I know for Chicago, they said that that the arrangement they made was that teachers would only be able to come over for 2 years. And I think Dr. Ewan mentioned that if you're trying to build your program and you always have teachers like a revolving door, then it's more difficult to build a program. And that's why, as an interim measure, we certainly want to have exchanges and work with teachers in China, because I think that will benefit our programs. But we also need to grow our own so that we have teachers who will be able to be in our programs for a long time. Because any of you who have done any kind of staff development know that you don't want to be training new teachers every single year for a program that you're trying to continue. You want the continuity as you go along. So I think these are some things that we are going to have to think about and deal with, but also I think working together and being advocates for some of these programs, we can talk to our legislators, we can think about how we would want to have some systemic change in California so that we really do have a top-class Mandarin program throughout our state. And so now I'd like to open it up to questions for our speakers. Are there any questions? So.
Thank you for the comments. And just a quick question on the immersion programs. My experience with immersion programs, they work well in elementary K-5, and then you start running into difficulty at middle school and high school. So especially at high school where they've been through an immersion program, so they're far advanced, and you run into sometimes scheduling issues, lack of students to make a program go. So I'm wondering if the San Francisco model has talked about as they grow it into the middle and high schools, or Arlene, if you've seen good models throughout the state.
I know that the San Francisco Unified School District is looking at developing more stringent programs in the upper grades, but frankly, we haven't gotten there yet. As a parents advocate, as an organization working with them, we're still focused trying to fill the funnel from the bottom up right now. But we do have some educators that are starting to look at it in higher grades, and perhaps Andy or Alice would be in a better position to address that.
Okay, and just a real quick follow-up. In the elementary, is it designed to be 50-50 with native speakers or Mandarin speakers and English speakers, or it is true just an immersion for whoever you get?
The ideal model is a third that are in the native tongue, a third English, a third bilingual. Yeah. But the target is 50-50 in terms of native and English.
Thank you.
And I would just add to that I agree that it is a problem when students come up the ranks, and they have been in immersion programs. When they get to the high school, it is a difficult situation then to provide them with something that will be on their level. So maybe we can all work together to figure out what to do at that point, because I don't think up to this point we found the solution.
Andy, did you want to address?
I would respectfully disagree that there's not a solution. I think there is for a short-term solution at CASE, since we have students that are going into schools, not only that most of them are going to schools in high school that don't have any Chinese, or if they do have Chinese, they definitely are not programs that are appropriate for our students because they start at level 1. So we have what we refer to as alumni or comeback classes, which are advanced classes for the students to either continue their Chinese or to advance their Chinese. What we should be going towards, I believe, is content area classes as well that can match what the students have experienced in the past. Not for all disciplines, but I believe it's definitely feasible to have one discipline or two disciplines in addition to Chinese language arts at the high school level that can be appropriate for immersion experienced students. So I don't think the model is that difficult to create, but we've got to get the students, a critical mass of students who are ready for that type of program.
My question is, having heard there's such a shortage in Chinese teaching teachers and also the difficulty importing the Chinese teachers here to teach Chinese, would the schools, you think, open to the idea of actually training some parents who are willing to teach with no education, no background in such, therefore needs to get some teaching credentials, and where would, I'm for one would be willing to switch my career, from, I used to work in the international trading business for close to 10 years, and now I'm caring for my son, but I would be very willing to actually look into that to become a Chinese teacher. Should that, should schools be open to this kind of interest? And where would I get information on that? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I think Arlene's ready. I'm looking at Gay. I think, why don't I let Arlene go? So she might have some things.
Well, no, basically, I think it's wonderful that you're willing to switch careers and devote yourself to this unique opportunity. Basically, there is an idea that I think we should be looking to native speakers of the language. As Duarte Silva mentioned earlier today, you start with someone who can speak the language, and then you teach them to become a teacher, and you assist them in that fashion. So I think it would be wonderful to develop programs that reach out into the community that, in fact, capitalize on folks with language skills. But you asked more specifically, how would you get started? You would contact the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, and they would list for you exactly what the requirements are for becoming a teacher in California, which today means basically, the BA, the credential, for NCLB, demonstrating subject matter competence. There's a CSET exam now in Mandarin, they would help you to figure out what you would need to do to get started and help you along the road.
Do you think these schools will actually be interested in recruiting people like us who have
Yes, they are.
Do you want to go to the microphone, please?
Okay. To answer this parent's question, I think I can probably help part of it. I'm from Cal State East Bay, and we have all kinds of, actually 3 types of teacher training program for Mandarin for Chinese teachers. The certificate program welcomes anyone, and it has 5 courses, and it welcomed all dialect teachers. And up to the credential program, we only offer single subject Mandarin credential. And then the certificate program, which is not the credential program, all the units you earn can be transferred into our Master in Education optioning curriculum development program. So this way, at least for the parents who are interested in getting into the field but had no idea about teaching, certificate program would be a good opportunity to learn the basics, and then you can decide where to go from there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We also have another comment here, and
since I've noticed that we have such a large Chinese immigrant population from Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, China for a long time. And I noticed there are a lot of high school Chinese language programs. And I would like to know what sort of outreach efforts have been made to give the students in these programs information as far as teacher preparation programs, such as the one at Cal State East Bay, so they can hook up, because there has been lots of career information. There are representatives from different universities who send this type of representatives to different schools, and why not representatives for the Mandarin teacher programs. Also, there are students who have gone through, say, CASE or other programs that have prepared them very well linguistically, and communication-wise. They have really good foundation. They're able to pass SAT 2 in Chinese. And are there some ways that maybe in the registration bulletin for these type of tests, a question can be put in that asks, would you be interested in getting information about Mandarin teacher credential programs? And perhaps that is something that we need to do more about, because the immigrants here have already been here. Lots of kids are bilingual. They have continued their Mandarin and Chinese use at home, and lots of them use the public libraries to keep up with their reading and writing, as well as viewing Chinese TV and programs. They're immersed in both languages and very capable of the kind of tasks and challenges for these teacher preparation programs. And I am wondering whether outreach efforts have been done for this population. I feel that because they don't have visa problems, they have been here for a long time. Lots of them have graduated from American universities. So they are ready.
I think that's an excellent idea, and I don't know of any particular programs that go out to students who are high school students talking about careers specifically for teaching Mandarin. I know we do talk about careers in education and in teaching, but not in the specific subjects. But I think it's a great idea to let students know that these opportunities are out there. The other thing, I know for people who already have skills and are interested in the credentialing, I know there's a program called EdJoin, which is what our district uses to post job openings that we have in our school district, and that's something that we might try to do also to encourage the numbers of people out there who have the credentials to know about different opportunities. So I think we haven't used all the avenues that are out there, and that's one of the things that we need to start doing, is to get our network together so that we can really do some outreach. But those are some great ideas. And then we have another speaker. Question?
Yes, hello. My name is Waylon Pete. Actually, I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and I came out here to the great state of California to attend your conference, and I enjoy the weather. It's great out here, and actually I'll be starting my master's in East Asian Studies with a focus on China. Currently, where I live, I teach Chinese. I lived in China for a number of years. So I just had a quick question, more so based to Ms. Burns about the state of California. As a graduate student, we're always looking for funding and types of ways to support our financial needs. So I was just wondering if the state of California, my own state doesn't do it, but I was just wondering if California could more so touch bases with graduate students or undergraduate students that are interested in China, like myself, and going into the community and helping out, kind of like I would say like a dim sum project where, oh, I love to eat, guys, where we could create something where everyone may not be able to focus on language, but more so expose people to Chinese culture. And what I mean by that is starting at a young age for American speakers, and as well as Chinese, people that are Chinese Americans, but creating such a program where they could sample things of Chinese culture, history, art, just like, when you're in a restaurant, dim sum comes by, you pick what you want. And maybe by fostering an exposure to kids at a young age, they could kind of pick up something, and maybe we may turn, someone may be an opera singer, or someone may be good at Chinese calligraphy. And this could be fostered by graduate students like myself who have exposure to China and Asia as just like a project that they could do to offset their financial costs in graduate school. So I hope that's not putting you on the spot. Like I said, Illinois doesn't have it, but I'm just wondering if something like that could be in the works.
So dim sum at your house?
Sure, who wants to come?
Well, I think it's a great idea. I just wish we would have the resources to start something like that, but it's a nice seed to plant, so thank you for sharing it.
Unfortunately, I've been given the cue that we're out of time for this segment, but I want to thank our speakers and thank you for listening for this part.
Thank you so much to Karen and Yalan and Arlene. We really appreciate your insights into the whole process, which is very complicated, but it looks like there are a number of doors to go in to get involved in the process. As they say in public broadcasting, and now a word from our sponsors. I want you to hear a little bit about the Berkeley China Initiative, which is directed by Associate Dean for External Relations, Tom Gold. Here's Tom.
Thank you very much, Camille. Speaking of words from our sponsors, that's how I wanted to begin. First of all, is Consul Leong here? Oh, okay, great, okay. Okay, then I don't have to close the meeting. But I do want to express my gratitude to the Committee of 100, to the Chinese American International School, to the Education Office of the Chinese Consul General, for all of their financial support and other energy that they have put into making this conference such a success. And of course, I absolutely want to, I can't even find words in English or Chinese to express my gratitude to Karen Leong Clancy for the work that she has put into this. This was her vision, and I have to say that about a year ago, Alice Carnes, who I had met in some previous life, I can't remember which one, and Karen approached us when the Berkeley China Initiative just began to apply for the grant from the federal government that Karen mentioned for a K-16 pipeline. We put a lot of effort into working up what we thought was a brilliant proposal, which Oregon got. And there's been some post-mortems about that, and some people feel is Oregon a red state? That was the most recent, the recent explanation was that Oregon was a red state. Of course, we have a red governor. But nonetheless, we did not get it. But the enthusiasm generated by Karen and Alice between themselves and on campus here was so great that that's why we have gone forward with today's conference, which we see as just the opening salvo in what we hope will be a series of conferences on this very important topic, both from on campus and in the community, and the links between the campus and the community. So, Karen, thank you again for keeping this going and now and in the future. No, I'm not going to take up, especially since the consul is here, I don't have to stall till 4:30. So I know it's been a long day, and people, I'm just astounded at the number of people who've shown up and the number of people who are still here. And I don't know if it has anything to do with what I'm going to say or the fact that there will be a wine and cheese reception. But let me just say a few things about the Berkeley China Initiative. The Berkeley China Initiative began just 1 year ago, July of 2005, as a way to help Cal realize its full potential in Chinese studies. We have the modest goal of making Berkeley the premier location for the teaching, research, and communication of all aspects of China, past, present, and future. And I think that this, the themes of the conference today fit very well into a lot of the goals that we want to do, is to discover what is out there, to bring people together, and to catalyze, to energize people involved in the study of China, in the work on China, and to realize a potential which too often has been latent and has not been fully brought to the surface. I'm seeing the Berkeley China Initiative as a matchmaker, and one of the things that we've done today is to bring people together, many of whom have not known each other before, but are embarked in the same mission to learn what each other is doing, to learn from each other, and to plan for future large and small conferences or programs to continue to share knowledge and to lobby the government, to get publicity out, to raise funds, to change the way of thinking, to introduce Chinese into the curriculum, and so on and so forth. A conference is a success when you have to drag everybody back from the coffee breaks because they're so engaged in conversations, discovering people who they had not realized were out there, very much interested in the same issues. So this is from that aspect. I think we've done a good job as a matchmaker. The Berkeley China Initiative is also a facilitator. What we've been trying to do is to facilitate conferences, to facilitate programs, to facilitate any sort of venue where people can get together to discuss common issues and then to move forward with writing proposals for grants, for lobbying, for holding other kinds of programs, and so on. I see the Berkeley China Initiative as an incubator. Today what we've been doing is incubating ideas about Chinese immersion programs, about K-16 pipelines, and so on. A conference like this is extremely exciting and extremely frustrating. We've brought people together, we've overpacked the program as we always do, but it's the first step. If people realize what is out there, now the hard work begins of trying to formulate proposals for other kinds of more focused programs now that we have surveyed the lay of the land. And finally, I see the Berkeley China Initiative as an energizer, and I think the energy that's been generated in the room today has really been extraordinarily gratifying and leaves me optimistic in a time when it's very hard to be optimistic, that we do have the energy out there and that we can proceed with the sort of programs that we've been discussing today. So let me back up a little bit about what we've been doing with the Berkeley China Initiative over the past year. And it also relates to these themes of matchmaking, facilitating, incubating, and energizing. The first thing we did last fall was to identify the faculty and graduate students on campus working on China. We have so far found over 70 faculty members and over 200 graduate students who focus their research or teaching on China, many of whom I had never met, many of my colleagues I had never met, and many of whom had not met each other. And it turns out there's just an extraordinary amount of resources on campus of people working on China in departments and professional schools who are not part of the traditional China community. For instance, we have people in the School of Public Health working on HIV/AIDS and working on schistosomiasis. We have people in the School of Public Policy. We have people in the Haas School of Business. We have people in the law school, which you might expect. People doing extremely interesting work on different aspects of China. We have possibly the strongest program on energy and environment in China of anywhere in the country through a number of different programs, including the Lawrence Berkeley Lab, where there's a China energy team of, I believe, now 9 people who not only are productive scholars and researchers, but also consult regularly with the Chinese government on environmental and on energy issues. So one of the first things that I did was to try to find out what the needs and the expectations and the wishes, the wants of our colleagues were, and then to assist them in establishing connections across departments and professional schools to help them organize working groups, to organize seminars and other forms of programs. We had, over the last year, 3 very active working groups, one on HIV/AIDS in China, one on environment and energy, and one on labor in China. And these will be continuing over the course of the next year. One of the themes that was brought out, especially in Sean Randolph's keynote speech this morning, was that there's such a proliferation of groups. There's so many people now working on China and doing work on China, but they often don't link horizontally. They're unaware of who is out there and who's engaged in the same mission. That's one of the things that the Berkeley China Initiative has been doing, is establishing horizontal linkages across this campus. Scholars lead a very lonely life. We're busy reading, we're busy researching, we're busy writing, and we often are locked up in our offices and our laboratories and don't have opportunities to make the kind of horizontal linkages which are necessary really to enrich our own research and to help us communicate better with our colleagues and with the outside world. It's true in the business community, it's true on campus, and one of the things we've been trying to do is to break those artificial barriers down among departments, specializations, and professional schools. At the same time, I am committed to broadening and deepening our links with the exceptional resources in the Bay Area on people who have experience working in China and have a great amount of knowledge and experience that they can share with those of us in the academic community. Today's conference is a sterling example of what we want to do. One of the first things that I did, other than inventorying our assets on campus, was to establish an external advisory committee of now about 20 people in the community who work on China. Karen was an inaugural member of that committee and brought us ideas from the community that they would like the university to be engaged in helping think more about, to do research on, to come up with policies, to bring people together using CAL's resources, to bring people together from government, from business, from academics, from the legal front, from journalism, from social movements, and so on and so forth. So the meeting today has just been a perfect example of the sort of thing that we're trying to do. Something else that we're going to be doing, some of these things are in the brochure, which I hope you picked up, but September 15th through 17th, we are working with Cal Performances for a 3-night, 9-hour presentation of the Kunshu, the Kun Opera Peony Pavilion, Mudanting, which is a company of 100 and some people from mainland China in a production from Taiwan. So it's a cross-strait production that's been performed in China, performed in Taiwan, I think in Hong Kong, and will be making a tour in the United States. One of our other external board members, David Li, who's sitting in the back, is what's the best word? An expert on the Chinese performing arts and happens to know a great deal about Kun Opera, about Kunshu, and is helping us not only with the production, but also to help build a series of auxiliary programs for the community and for the university around this 3-night production. You don't have to buy 9 hours worth of tickets. I think you can, as it works with Chinese operas, of course, you sample parts of it. But we're expecting this to have an enormous impact on the Bay Area, and it is the opening program in the Cal Performance season. So one of the things we've been trying to do is not only help faculty and graduate students identify for us the sort of things they're interested in and then help them facilitate programs, but also to have members of the community come to us to suggest programs to work on. And we've done some already, and we'll be doing some more. The environmental conference was mentioned. We've had business and law conferences, and we'll be having some more next year. One other thing that I neglected to mention when talking about the education thing was that Karen introduced us to someone from Hewlett-Packard, where they are developing a new technology called the virtual classroom, where you can have students all around the world and a teacher in one position, or you could have teachers in many positions as well, who can give a lecture or a presentation to everybody simultaneously, and then people scattered all around the world can have discussion sections or language drill sections. They can split up into that, and the teacher can monitor or snoop, whatever you want to call it, into all of the different programs. And HP, we're going to be working with them on. We already had a demonstration on testing out this program. It also was one of our faculty who teaches Chinese art history was extremely excited about using this. We also have something which was, I think, available to members of the community called the Electronic Cultural Atlas Initiative, which goes by the acronym ECAI, E-C-A-I, which enables you to use the computer to look at maps, to look at documents and so on that they've got stored there. I don't understand it. I had a demonstration and my jaw dropped. I said, someday I wish I could understand what you're doing, but it sure looks, it's mighty interesting and mighty impressive. So this is just a brief overview of some of the things that we've been involved in. Many of the programs will be run not through the Berkeley China Initiative itself, but through the Center for Chinese Studies. And I'd like to acknowledge, if he just wants to wave, Kevin O'Brien back there, who's the chair of the Center for Chinese Studies. We've been working very closely together, and all of our programs are open to the public. You can follow on the back of here, this brochure, there's the website for the Berkeley China Initiative. You can keep abreast of the programs that we're running, they said there's a huge number of them. Today's seminar will be webcast. We also have a webcast of the business conference held in March, and I'm not sure, I believe that the climate change conference in May is either up or is going to be up very soon. That might be on a different website, chinausclimate.org. Finally, on the website, you will see a listing of giving opportunities. One of the things that we're most concerned with is we have very big dreams, but as was discussed before, Waylon, when you come to California, you will realize that we have big dreams. California attracts people with big dreams, but we have very limited pockets, very empty pockets. And one of the things that we have to do is try to be creative in ways to support the kind of dreams that we have. Hopefully I've been able to convey to you some of the things that we want to do, that we're very engaged with the community. We want to be even more engaged, and that we welcome your support of all kinds. So thank you very much for your attention, and thanks again for coming today.
Thank you, Tom. As Assistant Dean for Development, I just echo his comments at the end that we have all these ideas and plans of what we want to do, and we welcome your participation not only through your connections to organizations who can be supportive, your companies, but also individual contributions are very much welcome as well. Thank you so much, Leanne. We really appreciate your comments. I'm afraid that I'm among those who had no idea, but I'm sure my colleagues will fill me in later on how eloquent you were. I really want to thank all of our speakers and panelists today. You've really done a tremendous job and gave of your time and expertise. We really appreciate your participation. I want to make just a few more thank yous. One, especially to our sponsors, as Tom has said, to the Committee of 100, the Chinese American International School, the Consulate General of the People's Republic of China in San Francisco, International and Area Studies, and the Institute of East Asian Studies here at Berkeley. Again, I want to thank Karen Clancy. I have a small token of our appreciation for you. We've had a few volunteers who were really important in bringing all of this together today. For my ruthless timekeeper, Christine McCabe, I want to say thank you. She was also very helpful in publicizing the conference and just being a great supporter and cheerleader for what this was going to accomplish today. Also, Karen's daughter, Dara, helped us with some registration earlier. None of this would have been possible without my wonderful colleague, Jillian Edgelow, who's standing in the back. She really helped us. If you had lunch, if you had directions, if you had a parking pass, it's all entirely due to Jillian's expeditious and very efficient help. I want to also thank the iHouse staff, who really did a tremendous job of helping with all of the AV equipment and the arrangements. Anna and David, thank you very much. Before you leave today, please do take a minute to fill out the blue evaluation form. We would love to hear from you about what worked for you today, what you would suggest we do differently next time, and also leave us your contact information if you would like to on the bottom of the form. You can leave those out in the hall on your way out. That is on your way to the reception, which is going to be lovely in the patio courtyard here in International House. If you just go past the restrooms and take a turn to your left and up the stairs, you'll see the patio in the middle of the building. It'll be very nice. Please come and enjoy a glass of wine and a brownie before you head back on the road this afternoon. Thanks again for coming, and we look forward to seeing you again.